Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. TGIF. Here is your Friday poll question. It's Merconish.com. Are opponents of Trump's immigration enforcement tactics better off dropping their complaints about the recent arrests of state court judges? Geez, Michael, you're going to have to explain that one. Okay, I will. Just as soon as I thank my friends at Parks Casino in Shippensburg, where you can get lucky in no time. Just off exit 29 of Route 81 in central Pennsylvania, Parks Casino, Shippensburg, celebrating military veterans every Monday. You show your military veteran ID, you get a free hot dog lunch with chips and a soda as a thank you for your service from Parks Casino. Then every Tuesday, it's the 50% golden discount. Take my recommendation. Check out all the action, the entertainment, the excitement. Go mingle, as I like to say, at Parks Casino. Every Friday, tonight, comedy night at Parks Casino. Brendan Donegan from True TV with special guest MC Dennis Owens from ABC 27. Dennis has been a guest on this program. Comedian Matt Peoples. The show starts at 8 p.m. and it's free. Then tomorrow night, Saturday night in the Side Pocket, the Tans take the stage. Free live music every Saturday night, plus the 500 state-of-the-art slot machines and the 48 live dealer electronic table games. Whatever you're looking for, they've got it under the roof at Parks Casino Shippensburg. Got to be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So the Thursday poll result, huge voting, like 40,000 people voting on a very lopsided question. I knew that going into it, but it was still worthy. Yesterday's poll question asked, should retailers itemize tariff surcharges on customer bills? It was 90-10. 90-10 in the end, 90% saying yes, put that Trump tariff right on the bill. It became very political because Trump doesn't want it. Because, as you know, Punchbowl News reported that Amazon was about to do exactly that. And then President Trump called Jeff Bezos and begged him not to. Maybe he didn't beg him. Maybe he just told him, you better not. And then Amazon already said, well, we weren't going to do it anyway. But it raises an interesting question because starting a few weeks ago, other retailers have been doing exactly that. And a number of opinion pieces have been arguing, hey, this is a good thing. Why not? Show everybody. You don't have to call it the Trump tariff, but show everybody exactly what part of the cost they are fronting as a result. And why doesn't the administration want that to appear on someone's bill? They don't want it to appear on somebody's bill because the administration all along has said China's going to eat it. You know, Mexico's going to eat it. Canada's going to eat it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When in fact, the experts that I've had on this program have said to me, in the end, it gets passed on to the consumer. Among the opinion pieces that caught my eye, which said this is a good thing, Allison Schrager writing for Bloomberg. The idea is a good one that is catching on with other retailers, she wrote, and Amazon itself already lists state sales tax separately at checkout. So why not include a tariff, which is just another form of taxation? Listing a tariff alongside a sales tax would be more consistent with how pricing usually works and is better for consumers. Some of the phone calls that we had yesterday pointed out some of the downsides, which is it becomes a slippery slope. Maybe at a certain point, consumers are going to demand to know what exactly is your profit margin. Somebody else said it's going to be too difficult to actually calculate exactly what might be the portion of the tariff that is not being absorbed by a foreign country and is therefore going to be eaten by the consumer. Or what about the role that the vendor is playing? How much of it are, so, you know, it's not so easy. It's not so easy to just plug it in and all of a sudden say, oh, okay, here's what you owe. But it was a great conversation. Nearly 40,000 voted and 90-10 people said, yeah, show me what I'm paying relative to the tariffs. So Ellie Honig, the great Ellie Honig, is guest hosting today's radio program. I'm so fortunate in that CNN's senior legal analyst Ellie Honig guest hosts for me, and Danny Savalos, who is the MSNBC legal analyst and NBC legal analyst. And of course, there's Mark Halpern from Two Way and his Wide World of News newsletter. Tara Setmeyer does a great job. Should have got that job on The View, but we're fortunate to have her here. Dr. Maz. It's really a great lineup. It's really, really a great lineup. I mean, Maz is hard to pin down because of his schedule running an enormous hospital system. But between, you know, Halpern and Danny and Ellie and Tara and Maz, I'm fortunate. So Ellie's totally invested. which I love. And we were going back and forth yesterday, and he brought to my attention the fact that he's publishing this piece in New York Magazine today, so you can look for it in the newsletter. And he said, my operating thesis is there's a lot to validly criticize Donald Trump about with regard to immigration, but the judge arrests, that's not the way to do it. And Democrats ought to drop it because it undermines their cause. So Ellie then suggested to me a poll question as follows. In the matter of United States versus Judge Hannah Dugan, how do you find guilty or not guilty? And then I wrote back to Ellie and I said, I love the issue. This will be great. Thank you for guest hosting. I said, I'm just hesitant to ask people to make the call, guilty or not guilty, before the case is fully developed because the judge has been charged, but we don't know what the judge's defense is. So we went back and forth, and then Ellie said to me, I said to him, maybe we ought to ask, how do you think the jury will find? And then Ellie said to me, well, those are two different questions. For example, I think she's guilty, but I also think a jury is going to find her not guilty, and I think a lot of people are going to vote that a jury won't convict her. How about if we couch it as based on what we know so far in the criminal complaint? So we go back and forth. This is how the sausage gets made. And then Ellie said to me, well, why don't we just test my hypothesis? Are opponents of Trump's immigration enforcement tactics better off dropping these complaints about the recent arrests of the state court judges? And that's where we ended up. That is where we ended up. So his piece begins this way. He says there's plenty of cause for alarm over the Trump administration enforcement of its immigration agenda during its 3+ months back in power. But the recent arrests of 2 state court judges, Hannah Dugan in Wisconsin, about whom I've spoken extensively, and Judge Luis Cano in New Mexico, they're not part of the problem. Don't conflate these well-founded criminal charges with the many valid and pressing criticisms of the Trump administration on immigration. Both of these judges crossed a line, thinks Ellie, and both criminal charges are justified, even if Judge Dugan is exceedingly unlikely to be convicted, as we'll discuss in a moment. Before we dig into these cases, a baseline proposition. It is not a crime to do nothing. I love this part of the lesson. And we talked about this on radio. It's not a crime to do nothing. No state governor or police department or judge or even civilian has any affirmative obligation to help ICE or other federal agencies do their work. That's why I've publicly criticized Trump's Justice Department for threatening to prosecute state and local officials who merely decline to cooperate with the feds on immigration enforcement. There's nothing there. They can't force you. They can't force you to participate with law enforcement. Then Ellie explains, but the criminal cases against Judges Dugan and Cano are different. They're not about the mere declinations to comply. They're about intentional acts of destruction. Both judges crossed that crucial boundary between doing nothing to help and getting in the way. And they ought to know better. Cano's case is the easier one. The former New Mexico state judge allegedly housed 3 Venezuelan citizens who were in the United States illegally. One was a suspected member of Tren de Agua. According to the federal complaint, he admitted to law enforcement agents that he'd used a hammer to smash the suspected gang member's phone because it may have contained incriminating photographs of that person holding guns. Says Ellie, we need not linger on this one. Destroying a cell phone with a hammer to prevent the feds from getting evidence is textbook obstruction. The Dugan case is more complicated and her conduct less flagrant, but still over the line. On April 18, a team of federal agents went to the state courthouse in Milwaukee to arrest Eduardo Flores Ruiz, a Mexican national. Flores Ruiz came to the United States illegally, was deported in 2023, returned again illegally. He was scheduled to appear in Dugan's courtroom on April 18 because he'd been charged with domestic abuse, battery, and infliction of physical pain or injury. By the way, parenthetically, I saw stories, I don't know how substantiated they are, online just today, saying that this guy is much more of a menace than Chris Van Hollen may have ever anticipated. Remember, Van Hollen said, I'm not here to argue for his innocence. I'm here to argue for his due process. Okay, point taken. Just a little more from Ellie's opinion piece today in New York Mag, which is published today by a link to in Smerconish.com daily newsletter. Federal immigration officials learned of Flores Ruiz's impending court appearance. They plan to arrest him inside the courthouse pursuant to an administrative immigration warrant. There's nothing unusual or improper about a courthouse arrest. Law enforcement agents know the suspect will be in a certain place at a certain time, unarmed, because he's got to pass through magnetometers. It's safer to make an arrest at a courthouse than during a traffic stop or on a street corner or during execution of a search warrant at a private home. The complaint against Judge Dugan, which was reviewed, approved, and signed by a federal magistrate judge, details the events inside the courthouse on April 18. And by the way, I'll just add, and was filled out by, under oath, an FBI agent. Ellie then goes on to recap all the facts of this case as presented in the complaint. I will allow you to go and read what Ellie summarized, but remember, as I went through it on air, reading from the criminal complaint on air a few days ago, I mean, she essentially pointed to the side door and motioned vigorously and told the defendant and his lawyer, like, that's your way to freedom. And then remember what happened when they got outside. He sprinted and law enforcement had to give chase. And I said on radio, God forbid someone would have been struck by a car. Imagine if someone in ICE had been struck by a car and seriously injured or killed in pursuit of this guy because the judge provided him safe passage. I agree with Ellie. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer in terms of her conduct if it is borne out by the evidence that would be presented at a trial. I doubt it'll ever get that far. While the complaint against Judge Dugan, back to Ellie now, makes out a valid criminal charge, the odds of an ultimate conviction are minuscule. It will come as little surprise if a federal district court judge dismisses the case, or even if a grand jury declines to indict. The politics around the case run hot, and it feels precipitous to prosecute a judge for her conduct inside her own courtroom. Ellie then criticizes, I should say, the way that Attorney General Pam Bondi amateurishly gloated on Fox News about this. If the case goes to trial, it'll be exceedingly difficult to convince a jury of 12 Wisconsin residents to convict Judge Dugan, particularly where Wisconsin is split roughly in half. Trump won the state in 2024 by less than 1 percentage point, 49.7 to 48.9. Jurors who oppose Trump or his anti-immigration policies will have a hard time putting aside their political views, no matter the actual evidence. And then he cites the Smerconish.com daily poll. He says that my audience is diverse, but generally moderate and centrist. Of more than 35,000 respondents, over 51% said that even if a judge helps a migrant evade arrest by ICE, because that was the way we worded it, that judge should not be arrested and charged with obstruction. So Ellie's point is, how are you going to win this case? You're not. But that doesn't excuse the judge. Quote, both Judge Dugan and Judge Canio did wrong. They're not martyrs or heroes, and their deification only distracts and detracts from the real case to be made against Trump's destructive immigration enforcement tactics. That is why the Friday poll question at Smerconish.com asks, are opponents of Trump's immigration enforcement tactics better off dropping their complaints about the recent arrests of state court judges? It's a political question, and mine is a yes vote. Mine is a yes vote for all the reasons I've already said on air. And as is often the case, I agree with what Elie Honig had to say. I will have what he's having. Go vote at Smerconish.com. Take good care of Elie in my absence today. Like and subscribe, like and subscribe, like and subscribe. Thank you for allowing us to cross the threshold of 60,000 YouTube channel subscribers. I appreciate that very much. And set yourself up for notifications, okay? So that you're always here with me when I'm addressing the issues of the day, namely the poll questions. Thank you, Parks. Thank you all who are watching.